Am I the a-hole for skipping my sister's wedding to spend the weekend with my grandma? This happened a few years ago, but it still gets brought up from time to time at family gatherings, usually as a jab or guilt trip. So, I figured I'd share it here and get some outside perspective. Am I really the a-hole in this story? Let's rewind a bit for context. My sister, we'll call her Eve, has always been a bit impulsive. She got married for the first time at just 18 after a huge fight with our parents. It was a courthouse wedding, and she didn't invite anyone in the family except for me. I was the one who gave her away. That marriage lasted a couple years, and they had a child together, but ultimately, it didn't work out. Fast forward almost a decade. Eve is now 27, engaged again to her boyfriend. We'll call him Adam, who's 29. At this point, Eve, Adam, and her child are all living with our grandmother. Let me emphasize, they had no jobs. The only money coming in was from my grandma's Social Security and Eve's child support checks. We're not a wealthy family by any means, so it was clear that things were tight financially. Despite this, Eve and Adam decided to have a small family wedding. Fewer than 20 people. They wanted to have it at my grandma's house, and to my surprise and concern, my sweet 76-year-old widowed grandma ended up doing almost all of the planning. She organized the food, cleaned the house from top to bottom, coordinated the decorations. She even paid for everything out of her own pocket with the promise that Eve would pay her back after the wedding. Yeah, okay. My grandma's best friend and neighbor was a godsend during this time. Since grandma doesn't drive, her neighbor took her grocery shopping, helped her set up the space, even assisted with decorations. She was over almost every day helping out. As a small thank you, Grandma invited her neighbor to attend the ceremony, not even the meal afterward, just the ceremony. The neighbor happily accepted. Now, Eve wasn't thrilled about the neighbor being invited. She made a few passive-aggressive comments about random people being at her wedding, even though the neighbor had been there every day, helping while Eve mostly just watched TV or scrolled through her phone. But she didn't outright forbid it, so the invite stood. Then, 1 week before the wedding, all hell broke loose. Eve had what I can only describe as a full-on tantrum. She accused Grandma of taking over her wedding and ruining everything. Apparently, the decorations and food weren't what she wanted, even though she'd been involved in every discussion and never offered any input or help. She also flipped out over the neighbor being invited. Long story short, she canceled the entire wedding. And as if that weren't enough drama, Eve and Adam moved out of Grandma's house that very same day. By some miraculous twist of fate, I roll. Their apartment just happened to be ready a week early. How convenient. Grandma was heartbroken. She wasn't just devastated over the canceled wedding. She was worried she'd now be cut off from Eve's kid, whom she had practically helped raise for nearly a year. All that effort, all that money, all that emotional labor flushed away and blamed on her. At this point, I was livid on my grandma's behalf. I live about an hour and a half away, so I don't get to visit as often as I'd like, but we're very close. We talk almost every day. I told her that my husband, our child, and I had already taken that weekend off for the wedding, so instead of wasting it, we'd spend it with her. We'd enjoy the wine, food, decorations, make a weekend out of it. Celebrate her instead. Grandma cried. Happy tears this time. Then, 3 days after the cancellation, I get a text from Eve. Suddenly, the wedding was back on. New plan. It's going to be held at a public park 45 minutes away from Grandma's house. No apology. No explanation. Just weddings back on. I immediately called Grandma. She hadn't heard a single word about the change. I offered to drive her to the wedding if she wanted to go. She ended up texting Eve about it, and Eve coldly replied, "If I wanted you to be there, I would have sent you the text." Read that again. At this point, even though my grandma encouraged me to go, she's your only sister, it's the right thing to do, etc. I just couldn't stomach it. Eve had manipulated and disrespected the very person who bent over backward for her. I declined the invite. I told her I had prior commitments and wouldn't be changing them. Instead, I kept my promise to my grandma. We spent the whole weekend together. We talked. We laughed. We drank the wine and ate the food she worked so hard to prepare. We even had a little unwedding celebration where we toasted to her strength and resilience. Honestly, it was one of the best weekends I've ever had. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Do others in the family guilt trip me for it? Oh, absolutely. Even though Grandma has never once blamed me, every so often I get these passive-aggressive comments like, "You really should make things right with your sister. Eve really wanted you at her wedding." Or the classic, "Well, you know how Eve is." Yeah, I do. And that's exactly why I didn't go. For those wondering what happened since, it's been 5 years. Eve and Adam now have 2 kids and are living with my mom, who's also widowed. I've since cut off both Eve and my mom over a completely unrelated, but much worse, incident. One even my grandma couldn't excuse. That's a whole other story for another day, or maybe another subreddit. I've always been the peacekeeper in the family. I used to bend over backwards to avoid conflict, but at some point, enough is enough. So, am I the a-hole for choosing my grandma over my sister's wedding? Because honestly, if I could do it all over again, I'd make the exact same choice.